Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Old Hunt, where we are still celebrating 10 years of Bloodborne. Last time, we defeated the Witch of Hemwick, made our way into this secret room where it looks like this poor person here was being tortured. From their outfit, looks like they were a hunter, which sort of makes sense because they were holding a very important item. They were holding on to the Rune Workshop tool. So we're going to take a look at this now. It is, I guess, literally, you would call it the workshop tool of secret letters, right? So, runes, secret letters, I've sort of been over that translation decision before, and I stand by the idea that it was a good idea to shift that to runes. So we'll just call this, going forward, the Rune Workshop tool. Okay, so let's go through the actual description now. Copyist Carol, student of Bergenworth, recorded the sounds of inhuman great ones, and he called them Carol letters, or Carol runes, as the case may be, right? Also, when I said record, I meant like record in a notebook, right? He's not like taking audio recordings of these sounds and then, transcribing them later on. No, he like noted down the sounds that he heard. And note, of course, here that I've used the plural for great ones and I've used the plural for sounds. I've used the plural for sounds because it just makes sense. There are several runes, and each rune seems to represent like a word, like sound concept, right? There's an image, it has an associated sound, it has an associated meaning. Sort of like kanji, actually. Except they're not kanji, we can see them, they're runes. So multiple runes means they must be transcriptions of multiple sounds. So that plural is plain enough based on context. Again, not from the Japanese language here, just from the rest of the game. And then the fact that it's presumably multiple Great Ones' voices that were transcribed. Yeah, that one's a little bit less clear, but I think it's pretty safe. I think it's a pretty safe bet that Carol wasn't just listening to one Great One say all these different words for him. That's kind of a strange scenario to think of. But anyway, he was writing down and recording the voices of the Great Ones. Also, potentially, remember how we were looking at the Moon Rune, and I was saying that it's possible that maybe Carol went to the dream. Went to the dream. One of those Great Ones may have been the one that's associated with the hunter's dream, and maybe Carol knew that one through Gehrman? It's possible. So just sort of keep that in mind. It's not clear, right? The Japanese allows for that possibility, but it definitely does not spell it out. It's just one thing that you can gather. So I figure I'd bring it up as a possibility, depending on how you interpret this as well as the Moon Rune. Anyway, let's move on to the final 3 lines of this description here. Okay, the hunter who retrieves this workshop tool can burn Carol letters into the back of their brain and gain their arcane power, their arcane strength. And okay, so that's all but the final line there. And there are a couple things to note here. First of all, just in terms of a like physical understanding of what's happening with runes, it's worth pointing out that it doesn't make any sense, right? If you look at the image, this here looks like a branding iron, right? And the description talks about burning the Carol runes into your brain. So the idea seems to be straightforwardly that you take this rod like a branding iron and you heat it up and then you press it to your skull and that burns the like image into your brain. And that's how it's presented here. But if you'll recall, actually, let's see if I can bring it up. It's its own whole category here, right? I was just looking at the Lake Rune in the other episode, so I know it's there. The third line, right, last one before the little break there, you can see that it's describing the effect of the damage cut that is raised on the one who carves, right? Kizamumono. So this isn't talking about burning a rune into your brain. It's talking about carving a rune into your brain. Or at least it was talking about that. Hi everyone, Editing Matt here to clarify that apparently the point I've just raised got almost completely patched out of the game. According to the Bloodborne Lore Translation Guide, the Japanese versions of the Communion Rune, the Formless Erden Rune, all of the Lake Runes, and all of the Deep Sea Runes had the phrase Kizamu Mono removed from their descriptions. And if you're asking yourself what runes that leaves, the answer is, as far as I can tell, none. The thing is, the phrase was then reintroduced later on as part of Volter's dialogue. This, I think, helps demonstrate one of the things that makes text updates to video games so tricky. Based purely on this sequence of changes, I'd be willing to speculate that someone at FromSoft noticed that the phrasing around the word carve didn't match up well with the idea of a branding iron burning runes into the mind and decided to change it. Maybe that was an older idea from another point in development that they decided to move away from. However, when it came time to add the character of Volter into the game and give him lines that made reference to Carol runes, that old idea of carving runes into one's memory snuck back in, possibly because someone remembered from all those old descriptions that this was how the process worked without realizing the text had since been altered. Whatever the ultimate explanation, though, it just goes to show how keeping these sorts of details straight can be difficult even for the Japanese developers. Thankfully, the official translation seems to have largely dodged this issue by using the idea of memorizing runes. However, as I'll let Gameplay Matt explain, the translators did make reference to a metaphorical practice of their own in the Rune Workshop tool description. I think the official English uses, etching runes, an etching process, which is yet another process, right, where it's like using chemicals to eat away at metal. What exactly is the actual process of memorizing these runes? Who knows? The fact that you're memorizing them, you're burning them into your brain, right? That much seems pretty secure. And the other thing that's weird about it, right, is it looks like, if you look at this tool, again, the image that's provided looks like a branding iron. It does not look like the end of that branding iron can very easily be changed out. Now, maybe we're not seeing the whole rod, right? So maybe the picture ends a little bit early, and there's like a little thing, and you can detach it, and this is just the head, and you've got little individual iron, like wrought iron pieces that you can put on the end of, change for the branding iron. But that's a pretty involved process that they're not showing us at all, right? And if that's how it works, why can't they illustrate that? There's an implication also that a lot of these runes, even in this very description, talks about the runes being written down, right? So there's an implication that you're finding these runes on pieces of paper. Well, if that's true, then what's going on with this metal rod? That could maybe have something to do with etching, but what does that have to do with this thing? And it looks like it has the hunter rune there, but we never need to etch the hunter rune into our minds, right? That's there from the second we wake up. And of course, we will eventually, actually, I don't know if we'll do it in this playthrough because I forget how you get it, but it is possible to get the hunter rune as a rune, in addition to the hunter's rune, in addition to the hunter rune on the bold hunter's mark, which isn't actually a rune. It's a way for you to more clearly envision the rune in your mind, right? It's so confusing, right? The actual physical process involved in what's happening with runes is very confusing. But this is the thing about Bloodborne, right? I feel like for all of that haziness, around the physical mechanics and all of the sort of hand-wavy stuff that you need to deal with when you're making sense of the gameplay, right? The actual thematics are very solid, right? Because you have this painful process of keeping a certain amount of things thoroughly burned into the back of your brain, certain images that are associated with sound and meaning, keeping those burned into the back of your brain, etched into your mind, right? Keeping those strongly in mind, and more strongly recalling them increases their effect, right? So all of that holds together very well. It's just the specific process of are we using this like a branding iron and burning things into the back of our brain? Once you get into the specifics there, that's when things start to get a little confusing. Maybe someone's actually managed to sort it out, but I am baffled. Anyway, the other thing to talk about in this line is this is another instance where literally in the Japanese we're seeing the use of the term shinpi, right? Divine mystery. And I was talking before, I think it was just the last episode, where I was talking about how the Lake rune uses the translation of Eldritch Truth for shinpi. And in this case, shinpi is being translated as wondrous strength. And if you're looking to establish the arcane as its own force in the world of Bloodborne, then taking out this reference to the nature, like the arcane nature of the power of runes, is sort of denying the tie between runes and the arcane that you would want to see. And so I can sort of see how people who are fans of that interpretation would be upset about this particular translation choice. As I've said before, my reading of this game doesn't necessarily involve like one concept of the arcane that links all this together, right? If you're just talking about something associated with holy mystery that's beyond your understanding, right? I think it's just sort of a catch-all term for the unknown that is associated with great ones and strange power that has no explanation, right? So in that sense, if you're talking about this mysterious power that runes have that are associated with great ones that you don't really understand, wondrous strength makes perfect sense as a translation, right? So again, depending on how you decide to interpret the like lore of the game through the Japanese text, your idea of what is or isn't a good translation can change, and that's really interesting to me. But you know, I'm one of the people that sort of comes down on the side of, okay, yeah, Shinpi is an important concept, right? Exploring the unknown, right? That's all that sort of idea is important to Bloodborne, and this divine mystery in some ways it really does seem like its own important force in the world, right? So I do think that there's something to that idea. I'm just not so concerned with the treatment of this particular instance of that translation. But that's just me. You know, other people can have their opinions, and that's 100% fine. I can usually, like I said, I can see where they're coming from. Anyway, let's move on to the final line of this description, and then we'll go on. Okay, here we go. So this is also important. That, presumably, runes, because we're talking about the power of the mysterious power of runes that the person who uses this tool can gain. So that which does not rely on blood. So we're seeing this distinction, right? It's this weird, mysterious power that doesn't relate to blood at all. And again, presumably the reference for that, once again, right? We're talking about a strange description in the world of Bloodborne, and how do we parse a reference back to a previous line? I'm pretty sure it's talking about runes, right? Runes don't rely on blood, and therefore they are things that are close to Schoolhead Willem's ideals. And it's that last part that's important, because the official translation, I think this is another sort of understandable thing if you're not paying attention to it. Actually, it makes an interesting contrast to the point I was just making, because this is one where I've fallen on the side of the people who are sort of more looking into lore connections that may have gotten stepped on by the translation inadvertently. And in this case, I think there is some stepping on that's happening, because if you make it sound like the official translation does, like Willem would have been proud, I think is how they phrase it, of Carol's runes, it makes it sound like Willem and Carol never knew each other, even though the school that Willem is the head of, when the Japanese talks about Schoolhead Willem, the school that he's the head of is Bergenworth. And we know that copyist Carol is a student of Bergenworth, right? It's in the opening line of this description. So actually, like, the official English makes it sound like their times there never overlapped, when actually they probably did. And that's an important thing to understand from the Japanese, that there is an open possibility that Carol and Willem were around at the same time, and that's also potentially something that could feed into the thing that I was talking about before when it comes to how Carol may have gone down into the labyrinth and up into the Hunter's Dream, if indeed the Hunter's Dream is up. We'll get to that in another episode later on. There's something I need to verify before I talk about that issue. It's its own separate thing. But anyway, how you envision Carol getting around the world sort of ties in a little bit with what era you think he may or may not have been associated with. And if you just look at the Japanese text, it's totally possible that Carol and Willem were around at the same time, and that Willem was the head of the school when Carol was there. And runes, which don't rely on blood, are close to the Schoolhead Willem's ideals. So this is also, not only is this telling us something about runes, it's also telling us something about Schoolhead Willem. He doesn't like blood. And that's going to come up again, but we don't have to worry about it just yet. Just sort of keep that in the back of your mind. And now we are going to take that rune workshop tool, and we're going to put it to immediate use. We've got a bunch of runes we can use, and we're going to fortify ourselves with them in the dream. Okay, we are back in the dream, and I am going to come over here. You remember how I was talking about the core theme of memory is one of the most strong things about the concept of runes and how you hold them in your head? Well, this is called the memory altar, right? Kyoku literally means memory. So this is the altar of memory or memories. So memory altar, totally good translation for that. And we're going to gain access to it. Oops, I skipped past the system text. I always do that. It's instinctive. I don't think it was super important, so we'll just let that be. All right, what runes do I want? I definitely want Moon, because more Blood Echoes is good. What does Beast do? Beast accentuates transformation, which I am not doing. Communion gives me more blood vials, +1 in this case. And this would give me +4 bullets. See, here's the thing about Bloodborne and bullets versus blood vials. 1 blood vial will heal me up a little bit more than the amount that it takes me to create blood bullets. So this +1, this 1 additional blood vial, is essentially, you can think of it as being traded, possibly traded for 5 blood bullets. This is like one of the second most powerful tiers of runes, right? If I remember my research correctly. And it gives you +4 Quicksilver bullets. That's less than you'd get in blood bullets from this 1 blood vial. So it's the interesting thing about Bloodborne and the way it works mechanically. You're better off just giving yourself a blood vial most of the time. Now, if you're really looking to play around with bullets, right, you want both of these. But I'm not particularly looking to play around with bullets in this episode, in particular, but also in this playthrough in general. So I'm just going to go for Communion here. And finally, let's increase our defenses. Get that damage cut going. It's 3% less physical damage that we don't have to deal with. And then this slot, notably, is like a blue-green color. We have no runes that will go in here. This one only takes special runes. We'll sort of get there eventually. The system text up at the top there, it's like memory space, I guess you could say, because it's like I don't know, threshold and region, maybe. Very interesting way of calling it that. And then this one is the one for a contract, right? Which is, what's the translation? It sounds way better than contract. Oath, right? It's the oath rune slot. So we don't have any oath runes yet, but we'll get them. We'll get there. And let's see. We don't want to just grab runes. We also want to power ourselves up.
Welcome. What is it? Very well. Let me.
I would really like it if I could get 2 levels. Am I going to make it? Oh, just barely. Yes! Haha, we got Arcane to 25. Let's go. Excellent. That means my fire weapon is going to be in very good shape for the near future here. 356 Blood Echoes is not a lot to do much of anything with, but I might be able, not fortify, repair. Yeah, I can repair. Repair costs are pretty low. Okay. Now, for the rest of this episode, we've got just a couple loose ends that I want to deal with. There's a dialogue from Imposter Yosefka that we have not yet managed to hear, and also there's a dialogue from Dira that we have not yet managed to hear, as well as a dialogue from some people living in some houses guarded by hunters who look a lot like me, actually, right now, that we have yet to hear. So we're going to do a little bit of dialogue hunting, and at the same time, we're going to go get a little bit of revenge. So I think let's start in Old Yarnum and see about getting some revenge. Actually, I don't want to come at it from Old Yarnum. I want to come at it from, where is the, the Dark Beast Lantern? Okay, could go to the... Is the Dark Beast Lantern in the Yarnum headstone? It is. Well, I guess that makes sense because it connects to Old Yarnum. All right, I'm going to warp there. We're going to get some extra dialogues with Jira and pay him back for all that time that he was firing machine guns at us. I'll see you soon. Okay. We are back in Old Yarnum. And I think there's one more, like, friendly dialogue that I might be able to get from him. And then I want to see about letting him kill me. And then I want to see about killing him. He's got it coming. He's messed with us one too many times. I really don't think he's messed with us that much at all. And, I mean, to be fair, we were the ones who just blatantly ignored his warning and came down here. You know, maybe we had reason to go after the Holy Chalice, but still. He does have a point in the sense that we just blatantly ignored his warning about the beasts, came down here, took what we wanted, and then left. So, not like we're entirely blameless in all of this, but still. You know, we can't let him feel like he's going to get away with telling us what to do. You know, we're the hunter. We're the hunter in this situation. This should be interesting. I really hope we can get the full dialogue. That would be great. The full death dialogue. Because you really can't get it in later versions of the game. The loading times are just too quick. But let's start out with the one friendly dialogue thing, right? Let's see what he'll say if we just engage with him as normal.
What is it? Surely I need not repeat myself. Go, I say. You have the whole night to dream. Make the best of it.
Great translation. And the thing that I wanted to point out is that sort of phrase that you have the whole night to dream. This is, like, it's sort of, it's not direct, right? Again, very little of this is direct. But if you think about it, how does he know that we have the whole night to dream, right? And in the Japanese, something like you have one night to dream. Maybe I can put a more literal version of that on the screen. But the idea seems to be that he's aware that our dreaming is tied to the passage of the night. And remember that note we found in the dream that talks about how we're bound to the dream, and if we ever want to escape it, we need to halt the source of the spreading scourge of beasts? And you know, remember how the like time of day seems to be tied to our progress on the hunt? It's making it sound like he's aware that this night of the hunt, once that ends, that's the end of our tie to the dream. And he would know that, right? Like if we're going full on with this interpretation, and I think it's pretty safe to say, based on the other dialogues we've gotten from Dira, that he knows about the dream. He's been through this before, and he knows that once the night of the hunt is over, once our hunt is successful, presumably like once his hunt is successful, we can break our bond with the dream. However that happens. I mean, he probably knows. We don't know that yet. So I think that's interesting. That's why I wanted that friendly dialogue. And now it's time for us to lose.
Is it the blood, or are you just raving mad? When the frail of heart join the fray, the hunter becomes the hunted.
There it is. He's the one who's going to hunt us. I didn't want that dialogue of his to overwrite.
As often as you like, and I will show you another.
All right. Well, I tried. That dialogue is still important, right? The "I will show you another death, come as often as you would like," right? All of that is confirming that he knows one death isn't going to stop us. He knows that because we're tied to the dream, we can die over and over again and keep on coming back. So it's yet another piece of evidence that we can add to our like mounting pile of evidence that Dira knows about the dream and our tie to it and what's going on the night of the hunt. But sadly, I wasn't able to get the dialogue I really wanted. which was the full set of his lines. And the thing that's interesting about it, right? I think I've already talked from a lore perspective about what makes it interesting. Right? The next time you dream, give some thought to the hunt and its purpose. And maybe I'll do this in editing. Good idea, Gameplay Matt. The main point I wanted to make here concerns how the Japanese lines fare a bit better than the English when you consider where they get cut off. Both the English and the Japanese start out pretty strong, in my opinion, with Dura speculating that we still dream. However, in the second line, the Japanese is able to benefit from the high context nature of the language. You see, if all a Japanese player ever sees is the line, "Then while you're there, seriously rethink things," that interpretation of those two lines is self-sufficient. The official English, by contrast, is clearly being cut off, because "the next time you dream, give some thought" is evidently an unfinished thought. So even though if we add in the third line, both statements make sense and are roughly equivalent, except maybe for a bit more ambiguity about whether Dira is talking about the hunter's dream in English, cut the line off a little early and suddenly the Japanese fares better just because of the high context nature of the language, which I think is cool. But enough on that. Let's rejoin Gameplay Matt now as he reaches the top of the ladder for his rematch with Dira. Alright, now, let's actually give this a fight. Oh. You can knock him off the building. It's like the best way to beat him. Okay. I really wish... Well, it didn't take the blood vial away from me. That's nice. What happened? Boy, that stake driver. Okay. Uh-oh. I don't want to fall off the building. Ha! I finally dodged one of those bullet volleys. There we go. Yeah, use your blood vial. Uh-oh. I'm in trouble. The thing about hunter enemies is sometimes they do or don't have blood vials that they can use, but they only ever use like a prescripted amount. So Jira's got the one, and that's it. Oh man, he hit me from like behind. So now, as he slowly continues to lose health, just the fact that I've healed 6 times already, and he's only healed once, means I'm going to win this fight. Ha! My turn to get a hit I probably didn't deserve. Boy.
You're the beast. Just think about what you're doing. It's utter madness.
I've talked about this in Translation Born, but there's an interesting shift that happens in that particular set of lines, where in Japanese he calls you mad. He says, you know, think about it, you've gone insane, something to that effect. Whereas the English, think about what you're doing, it's utter madness. He's calling your behavior mad, as opposed to it's not essential, right? He's not attacking your essential quality of being mad. He's saying what you're doing is mad, and therefore, right, if you think about it, you can stop it. And I actually think that realizes his point better, because as we pointed out, Jira's the type of person who believes even these beasts, after they transform, they're still people, right? He's sort of, to his core, believes that you don't have to do these things, and you don't have to be ruled by your current, like, status. So it's possible for us to sort of come back. And so I like the way that the translation sort of takes out the idea that think about what you're doing, you've gone mad, and shifts it subtly to think about what you're doing, it's utter madness. Because it just makes it that much more possible for you to change your ways, and Jira's exactly the type of person to be like, I believe that you can change your ways, even though I'm dying, right? Like, because that's his death line. Anyway, I think that's pretty cool. And I've got 6 of them. It's fine. I'll use another Bold Hunter's Mark. We've got other places to go, so let's carry on our merry way now. Right, we've gotten our revenge against Jira for his attacking us. We were able to sort of get into his good graces by lulling him into a false sense of security and then taking him out. And I remember, by the way, what I was going to say. All those volleys he was firing reminded me of someone else that I need to get revenge on. I mean, they were on my list anyway, but that particular synchronicity of action had that at the forefront of my mind. But now, of course, we are going to check in on Imposter Yusefka and see what words she has to encourage us, as we haven't found anyone for a little while, but let's see what she has to say about our progress.
Oh, hello. You're still alive. Any luck, then? Finding anyone who hasn't turned? If you do, you know where to send them.
It's so good. I wanted to do that. I wanted to get this dialogue specifically to highlight how the translators have put in some variation for the very generic yoroshiku onegai ne from the Japanese, because you know where to send them, right? Literally, she's every single time, maybe not every single time, but very frequently, she's ending her dialogues with yoroshiku onegai ne, which is just like, if you get very literal, it's like, kindly please, okay? But that's way too literal. The actual sense of the usage of the phrase is sort of like, I'm counting on you. I look forward to continuing to work with you, right? That type of sentiment. And they've interpreted that sentiment in different ways that I think is appropriate to the situation and brought it out in different ways. So in this particular version, she ends the line in English with, you know where to send them. We're going to talk with her one more time, get a dialogue we've already heard. Pay attention to the last thing she says, because it's the same in Japanese.
What would I ever do without you? You're really making a difference.
You're really making a difference, right? And the only thing that's changed about that dialogue is the surrounding context. And I think that's really cool. It's possible that they would just come up with something generic that could sound the same in both situations, but they went to the trouble to find something that would fit either use case. And this comes up a lot in Japanese. Japanese is a high context language, and often that means the Japanese speaker will use one phrase in a variety of situations where if it was a native English speaker, they would use a variety of different phrases. So it allows you to, if you think about it that way, right? It allows you to try and read into the situation to see what the person would be trying to convey if they weren't just using a generic phrase. And I think one of the good sort of ultimate example of this, you can think of, it's almost a little bit of a stereotype if you watch a lot of anime. And I think this comes through a little bit in video games, but not quite so much because it's easier to work around in a video game medium. But it's harder to work around in an anime medium because in a video game medium, you have basically complete control over what the English language voice actor says and what the subtitles say, right? Whereas in anime, a lot more often people are listening to the Japanese audio and they're looking at English subtitles. And I mean, probably they have a little bit more freedom in this in English dubs in anime, but I always watch subbed, so there you go. If you want to know where I fit into that age-old debate, but if you watch a lot of subtitled anime, I think they have a little bit of a problem on their hands when this situation arises, which is Japanese characters will very frequently communicate with another character by saying their name with emotion, right? It'll be in a situation where someone's exasperated and they'll just be like, Jonathan, right? Or maybe they'll be feeling appreciation for something kind that this person has done for them, and they'll just say, Jonathan, right? You can hear the difference in the vocal delivery that I'm giving there, but if you just look at the subtitles, which is what would be the case in, if we're talking to Imposter Yusefka here, if you're just looking at subtitles, it's exactly the same thing. They just said the person's name. And a lot of the times you can, right, if you're paying attention, you can read into what is being communicated when a character says another character's name, and you can be like, okay, what's the underlying thought? How do I communicate that in English that doesn't come across in this sort of hokey way, because in English we don't really communicate that way very often. Not never, right? You can hear the example I gave earlier. You could hear differentiate from the voice tones, and you can think of situations where people would just react that way. But it happens a lot less often in English than it does in Japanese, or at least in Japanese anime. I don't know how true to life the anime example is. Sometimes there's a lot of stuff that happens in anime conversation that doesn't happen in real life conversation. But anyway, I think it's a good thing to be able to read into these sort of similar repeated phrases like yoroshiku onegai ne, or even just another character's name, pull out the underlying meaning, match it to the appropriate context, and then use different words to describe it rather than just a go-to thing that's the same every time, like the character's name repeated over and over and over again. Because if you do that in English, you get weird things, and people are, you get, like, there's an old Cartoon Network commercial, I don't know if anyone besides me remembers this, where they just cut together all these moments from Inuyasha where the two main characters are saying one another's names to each other back and forth over and over again. And it's sort of ridiculous. It was done in, like, a loving manner, but still, it's not how people communicate in English, and so it's noticeable if you don't localize that sort of thing, if you don't account for it. And I think this is a great example of, working with a generic Japanese phrase, yoroshiku onegai ne, and coming up with some very thoughtful readings as to what the actual character is trying to communicate, and putting that in the English version of the line, right? And if you're a Japanese player, you'll get the differentiated English lines, but I mean, you're just reading the subtitles anyway, right? So you can read into the situation yourself. That's what you're doing as a Japanese speaker all the time. Anyway, that's probably more than enough time spent on that particular issue. We're gonna continue our quest for revenge. We're gonna go fight that other, enemy that throws hails of bullets at us, and get a little bit more dialogue, and that'll probably be it for this episode. I'll see you again soon. All right, back in the Cathedral Ward. We need to make our way back to the right of the Grand Cathedral, because there's a bunch of enemies that were much too strong for me before, but now, I've been to the Hidden Ward. I have gained the eldritch power of Carol runes because of the Rune Workshop tool. I can run up invisible stairways. That's not actually a rune. That's just the game being 1.00. What else have I done? Oh yeah, I've just gained experience, and I've used the will of the slain to bolster the power of my being, such that my attacks deal fire damage, because I converted their nature with a blood gem, which is just like how blood defines an organism, and all these things. All right, here we go. Moment of truth. Gotta remember to use my transformed form here, so that I don't have to get quite so close to get this backstab. And then, nope. Oh, I missed the visceral. That's not going to be a problem. Not going to matter. Not even going to be an issue for us. I don't want to go too close to that other hunter, because two of these enemies at once is a bit much. But one I can deal with. I'm surprised you haven't started spamming bullets, but I'm very happy about it. It's very annoying when all you do is spam bullets. So I hope you'll keep your weapon just like that, please. Oh, see, here come the bullets. Ha! I dodged them. Note, of course, the clothing here. Uh-oh. Thankfully, enemies this early in the game pretty much don't follow up the visceral openings that they get. You saw that with Jura as well, right? I think that's one of the values that they can control with, will they use blood vials? How many will they use? Usually just one if they use any. I think maybe sometimes two. It's usually just one if they use any. And will they or won't they follow up if they get an opening for a visceral? And this early in the game, they probably won't. But anyway, I was pointing out his clothing. He's dressed like we are. So is this other enemy over here, right? So these are the kidnappers of Yahar Ghul prowling the streets, right? They probably are looking for anyone else they can find who's out on the night of the hunt that they can grab and bring over for their weird rituals. Or we're not going to let that happen. We're going to phase through reality. That's what we're going to do. Because this is 1.00. Oh, I couldn't sneak up on this one. Oh, that's alright. That's alright. One-on-one, I'm not as scared. Also, this one doesn't have a gun to constantly spam. So, less scary. Powered up Tonitrus is a little scary. Well, maybe wait till that runs out. The other thing, of course, is to note, is hunter enemies like this do not respawn. So these two are now gone forever. And if I had died in this particular 1v1 against the Tonitrus hunter here, if that hunter had slain me, then I would have only had to deal with the one and not both of them. And now neither of them will ever return. And I could go get revenge on that kidnapper up there, but I don't think it's worth it. Is there an item that it's guarding? Because if so, then it would be worth it. But if it's just the kidnapper, I think it's just the kidnapper. Yeah, forget it. I'm not sure if it'll lose interest in me if I come over this way. I hope it does. Alright, I think it has. Alright, and then we get a couple very almost inconsequential dialogues, but I wanted to get them, dang it. I'm a completionist at heart. So we're going to knock on some doors here real quick.
Bless us with blood. Bless us with blood.
Right, some chanting, some sort of formal-ish language being used here. So, literally, there's no verb being employed. It's something like, upon us, the blood, right? If you try and recreate that literally. But I think the idea of bless us with blood makes a ton of sense. I mean, these are people who are believers in the healing church. They live in the cathedral ward. This is something of a chant, right? I think the official translation does a great job, again, bringing out the underlying meaning as they translate this into English.
Bless us with blood. Bless us with blood.
Yeah. Upon us, the blessing of blood. Right? It's pretty clear what's going on there. Also, if I remember correctly, yes, we have a Wandering Madness back here. Should give us a little bit more upgrade materials. Maybe I can outfit myself with a new secondary weapon. This one right here is going to be like our primary weapon for a while. But we can still play around a little bit with additional weapons, I think. Are there any items up here? I know you can come out on this roof. I don't remember if there's a reason to do it, except to fight these crows. Uh-oh, it got me. I thought I'd be faster. I was not. Alright. Well, I think that's all for up here. So, the question now... Do I go back to the dream? I've still got 20 blood vials. I realize now, actually, there was 21 in that fight with Dura, so I miscounted. I'll probably have edited something in already about that, but I just realized it now. Let's fight these enemies. Let's clear the way. And if I don't take any more damage, I'll go ahead and proceed next time. Not this time. This time's gone on long enough. Into the cathedral over there. Alright. I want you to... Oh, alright. Get into attack mode. Like that. Not like that. One of you get into an attack mode where I can... Alright, well... Utterly failed. Utterly failed. I was so confident I was just going to casually destroy those enemies, and then I got casually destroyed. That was pretty funny. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because this whole episode is sort of about revenge, so I can't let that stand. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let them get in the last word. That's ridiculous. No, I'm going to have my revenge. I'm going to run past all these enemies, because I really don't care about them. They didn't kill me. I don't want the big guy to interfere, so let's alert this person, and then come out this way. First of all, grab these blood echoes, just because that way, even if I die again, which I really don't want to do, but could happen, if I die again, I won't have lost anything. Oh man, it's too slow? Really? Again? This is obnoxious. Alright, try that charge again. Try it one more time. I dare you. I dare you. Oh, there it is. No! I was too far away! Oh, this is hilarious. All right, finally. Okay, one more. I got you this time. Oh, sweet revenge. All right. Yeah, 18 blood vials, full health. This is going to be enough. That frenzy meter is going to go away. This is going to be enough. So next time, I will head into, finally, the main entrance of the Grand Cathedral, where I've supposed to have been headed all along. We're going to get into some brain-bendy stuff again. We're back to sort of advancing the main plot, and we have a lot of loose threads lying around that we need to collect, and one additional puzzle piece to look at, many additional puzzle pieces to look at, actually, now that I think of it. Next time is going to be a big one. So, in preparation for that, I'm going to call an end to my hunt for the evening, but as always, I wish all of you good hunting.